and welcome to another episode of Out of Office with Leen. I'm Leen Nsouli, your host and office supplies industry analyst at the NPD Group. The Out of Office series from NPD takes us out of the world of office supplies and into a new space or industry in order to explore and take advantage of ideas or trends that are adjacent and complementary to our industry and consumer. However, today we're actually doing something a little bit different. It's the back to school season, and I'm super excited to have Dyanne Griffin from School Family Media here today to talk to us about how teachers' lists might be influencing sales of school supplies this season. Dyanne, it's great to have you. Thank you so much for joining.
Oh, thanks for having us.
Thanks, Dyanne. So I wanted to start us off by talking a little bit about the sales performance so far for retail office supplies this season. So retail office supply sales right now are up about 18% season to date versus 2020 and another 1% versus 2019. But when you splice out a subsample of the more K through 6 school list type categories, so these are your composition notebooks, spiral notebooks, your crayons, in-case pencils, these items that you would find on a school list, let's say, this sample is growing 45% versus 2020. So really rebounding and making up for those sales lost last year, but it is declining versus 2019. And that's really part of the reason I wanted to speak to you today and understand some of the school list trends and influences that are taking place. So could you tell me a little bit about what you're seeing more or less of on lists this season, especially as compared to 2019?
2019. Yep. Sure, I can talk about that. We have about 1.5 million school supply lists on the platform right now. So we have a really great sample set to be able to look into it. And it's been interesting to see it evolve throughout the season as well. We're still seeing about the same number of items on the list. And we are definitely seeing the same as you are, that huge increase in the traditional school supplies over 2020. But there are a few categories that are slightly down from 2019, like you said, those traditional items, the notebooks, pens, paper. But what's interesting is they were down quite a bit more earlier in the season, and they seem to be catching up now. Part of that is because a lot of our lists come in from middle schools and high schools later in the season. So we expect that to continue to rise. It'll be interesting to see where we end up at the end of the season. We're also seeing a slight increase in items that used to be shared in the past. So like scissors, that has actually gone up, went up in 2020 and is going up again in 2021. And items like dry erase markers continue to hold steady. They aren't going back to 2019 points. Some of the things that we saw really increase on the list, like handheld pencil sharpeners, really shot up in 2020, probably because they didn't want the kids sharing the pencil sharpener, but now they're just still slightly up just over 2019. So it's kind of corrected itself a bit. Things like the backpack are back. I guess that's not a surprise with the kids heading back. More requests for the school boxes. Our guest there is, going to have all those items for each kid. And then the big one is the water bottles, and we're assuming that that's because the kids can't use the bubblers at school. So we saw a significant increase those last year and continued triple-digit growth on the list this year. So a lot more people asking for the kids to bring those in. The PPE is starting to go down. We're not seeing as much like the masks and such on the list, although hand sanitizer and soap are still up there.
Thank you so much, Dyanne. The note about the masks, I think, is very interesting. I want to make sure we call that out. And then a lot of the insights you're sharing really support the notion that there's room to grow versus 2019 as the season continues to progress. So that's really great news. A lot of what we're talking about here, no sharing, no touching of common surface areas, that's also supporting the growth and the rebound versus 2020. These policies are going to continue to be very important and critical to monitor, especially with the Delta variant presence. It's impacting, behaviors within schools, inside the classrooms. It's impacting what teachers continue to request, not just with school start dates, but well through the fall and maybe even into the spring semester of next year. On that note, I was curious to find out a little bit more about what you're seeing on virtual school lists. Are these coming back at all? And what about the types of items we saw? So things like the dry erase boards that were being used for virtual learning, is that something that's coming back or is it changing?
Right. So in 2020, we did have a significant number of lists that were specifically for virtual or at-home learners. We are not seeing that at the rate this year. There's really been one list per school. There are a few exceptions, but the majority, they just have the one list for all children this year. But we are seeing some of those things stick. The personal whiteboards, for one, that was a huge increase in 2020. It's declined a little bit, but it's still much, much higher than it was in 2019. And with that, you see the increase of things like the dry erase markers that we talked about earlier holding steady. We're guessing that's probably one of the reasons they're not sharing those up at the board anymore. They're doing it at their desk. And then things like the whiteboard erasers and stuff like that, we're definitely still seeing more of those on lists.
Very interesting. That's good. That's really good to know. Thank you for that, Dyanne. So I have one more question, and this one really has to do with the acceleration of digital and technology within work and learn. And, we've seen that impact how teachers, for example, interact with students and parents. In some cases, for example, teachers are assigning homework assignments, right? Digitally, they're grading some homework assignments digitally. Within our sales performance of these school supply categories, we're seeing a decline in some of those more paper-based products like notebooks and loose filler paper this season compared to sales in 2019. Is that reflective or reflected within the what's on school lists? Are you seeing a decline in some of these items?
Yeah, we're seeing the slight decline. Like we said, it was a bigger decline earlier. It seems to be catching up a little bit, but you can see the reflection of the tech on the list as well. You don't typically see computers on the supply list. We do have some,
It's a high price point product. Yeah.
It's a high price point. And I think with last year, especially, there were a lot of donations. There were a lot of schools providing that specific piece of technology to the students. But we see a significant increase in things like headphones and earbuds, more so even headphones because they fit the little ears better.
Yep.
But computer mouse we see, and we're even seeing some changes just as technology evolves. We used to see a lot of flash drives on the supply lists, and we're not seeing those. They're continuously going down the last couple of years as the schools move to Google Classroom and things in the cloud. You don't have to save things. Yeah. So you can definitely see the trends there. But like I said, not as much on the actual computer front.
That's very true and totally in line with the trends in the industry that we're seeing. Some of the latest products in the market have actually found success in blending technology with traditional ways of using supplies. I think consumers really like that and they've responded well to that. Overall, it sounds like we still have some room to grow versus 2019, which is great news. Teachers are asking for more items that help reduce the sharing within the classroom and touching of common surface areas. I think that's something we need to really continue to monitor, not just through the end of the season, but all throughout the fall with the Delta variant presence and how that's going to impact behaviors for teachers, students, and parents, of course. And then finally, technology is influencing what is being asked for from a supplies perspective versus prior years. And I think that's also something that we have to continue to keep a close eye on and understand where the opportunities are as well as the threats for the industry. Dyanne, I want to thank you so much for your time today. I truly appreciate your expertise on teachers' lists. It's a big help in understanding one of the influences on sales trends that I'm seeing this season.
Thank you, too. It was great to just sit and chat for a few minutes about everything that's going on. It'll be interesting to see where we end up at the end of the season.
Agreed. Thank you, Dyanne. And for those of you who are listening today, thank you so much for joining. If you have any questions or comments about what you heard, please reach out. Also, make sure to check out my other podcasts from this year on the NPD website. Thanks again, and goodbye.